You're bound in chains on a trading ship heading up the Volga River, 922 AD. Your captors speak a language you don't understand, but you've learned to recognize certain sounds, the harsh Nordic words that precede violence, the softer tones that mean you're being evaluated like livestock. When the ship finally docks, you're herded onto shore with dozens of other captives. That's when you see them. Not the bearded warriors you expected, but women, Viking women in fine wool dresses and silver jewelry, walking through the rows of prisoners with the confidence of experienced merchants. One stops in front of you, lifts your chin with calloused fingers, checks your teeth, squeezes your arms. She's not buying you. She's deciding your price before she sells you. An Arab diplomat watches from the crowd, shocked enough by what he's witnessing that he'll write it down for history. These women aren't just participating in the slave trade, they're running it, while their husbands are hundreds of miles away, raiding England for silver. These Viking women are here, managing one of medieval Europe's most profitable industries. The Vikings TV series shows us Lagertha leading armies, a shield maiden with a sword and shield, fighting alongside men. That's the story Hollywood wants to tell. But history tells a different story, one that's far more complex and morally darker. The brutal truth about Viking women isn't that they were warriors, it's that they were something else entirely. Before we explore what Viking women really were, hit that like button and subscribe. Comment below where you're watching from. It's incredible that we're discovering these hidden truths together from different parts of the world, because what you're about to learn will completely change how you see Viking history. Let's start with what you think you know. Lagertha, shield maidens, Viking women fighting in battle formations alongside men. It makes for great television. The problem is, archaeology doesn't support it. Over 1,000 Viking burial sites have been excavated across Scandinavia. You know how many contain women buried with weapons? Fewer than a dozen, and even those are heavily debated by archaeologists. Some argue the weapons were symbolic, not functional. Others suggest these were priestesses who held ceremonial weapons, not warriors who wielded them in battle. But here's what those same burial sites do confirm, over and over again. Viking women buried with keys. Lots of keys. In Viking society, keys weren't just for locking doors. They were symbols of authority, of household management, of economic power. The woman with the keys controlled the stores, managed the slaves, ran the estate. When your husband sailed away on a raiding expedition, and most Viking men did, repeatedly throughout their lives, you didn't sit home weaving and waiting. You became the head of household. You made decisions about planting and harvest. You bought and sold goods at market. You managed the thralls, enslaved people who worked your land, and you made decisions about their lives with the same cold calculation you'd use for livestock. Which ones to keep, which ones to sell, which ones to breed for the next generation of slaves. This wasn't exceptional. This wasn't rare. This was normal life for Viking women of any substantial household. The keys in those graves tell a story Hollywood doesn't want to hear. Viking women didn't need swords to have power. They had something far more valuable: economic control. Here's something that should make you uncomfortable. The English word slave comes from Slav, as in Slavic people, Eastern Europeans. You know why? Because Vikings captured and sold so many Slavic people that an entire ethnic group became synonymous with human property. And Viking women weren't just passive participants in this system, they were active managers of it. Imagine you're a Viking woman in Norway around 950 AD. Your husband returns from a raid with new thralls, 3 women and a boy, all captured from a village near Kiev. They don't speak your language. They're terrified. They're yours now. You examine them like you'd examine animals at market. The older woman looks strong enough for field work. The younger one is pretty. She might be valuable for household service. Or you could sell her to someone who wants a concubine. The boy is maybe 10 years old, perfect age to train for labor. You make these assessments without emotion, without hesitation. This is business. These people represent wealth, labor, future profit. The fact that they're human beings with families who are probably mourning them right now, that's not your concern. Your concern is maximizing their value to your household. This is the reality that archaeology and historical sources confirm again and again. Viking households ran on slave labor, and when men were away, which was most of the time during raiding season, women managed that labor. You weren't just giving orders, you were the one who decided punishments when slaves disobeyed. You were the one who decided which enslaved women would be forced to bear children to increase your property. You were the one negotiating prices when you sold them at market. It's winter in Iceland, year 985 AD. You're in labor, and your husband left 4 months ago on a trading voyage to Norway. You don't know if he's alive, if his ship went down in a storm, if he's coming back, but none of that matters right now because the baby is coming. Finally, after hours of pain, the midwife holds up your newborn, a girl, your fourth daughter, but something's wrong. You can see it immediately. The baby is too small, her breathing shallow, her cry weak. The midwife doesn't say anything. She just places the infant on the dirt floor and steps back. This is your decision now. In Viking society, when a baby was born, it was placed on the ground until the father decided whether it would live or die. If the father was present, he would either pick up the baby, accepting it into the family, or leave it there, which meant it would be taken to the forest and exposed to the elements until it died. But when fathers were away, that decision fell to mothers. And right now, you're looking at this tiny, struggling infant on the floor, and you're making calculations. You already have 3 daughters to feed. The harvest this year was poor. Food stores are running low. Winter has months left to go. You look at your other children, already thin from rationing. You look at the baby gasping on the floor. You make the decision that Viking mothers had to make. Survival of the family you can feed, or compassion for the baby you can't. The midwife reads your face. She wraps the infant in a thin cloth and leaves your home. You'll never see that baby again. By morning, she'll be dead from exposure in the forest. This wasn't murder by Viking standards. This was practical resource management. And it reveals something crucial about Viking women's power. They had life and death authority over their own children. Your husband hit you last night, left a bruise on your face that everyone can see. In Christian Europe, England, France, most of the places Vikings raid, you'd have no legal recourse. A husband's right to discipline his wife was absolute, backed by church law. But you're not in Christian Europe, you're in Viking Denmark, year 1020 AD, and you have options. This morning you walk to the local assembly, the thing where disputes are settled and laws are announced. You stand in front of witnesses and declare loudly enough for everyone to hear, I divorce you for striking me and for being a poor provider. Just like that, it's done. Under Viking law, you don't need your husband's permission. You don't need a priest's blessing. You just need witnesses to hear your declaration. You return home and gather your property, your dowry, the wealth you brought to the marriage, your personal belongings, and the 3 thralls you own, enslaved women you've had since before the marriage. They're yours, your property. They go with you. By sunset, you're back at your father's house, and he's already negotiating with another family about a better match for you. A man with more land, better prospects, a reputation for treating his wives well. This sounds progressive, doesn't it? A woman with property rights, divorce rights, economic independence. Medieval feminism, almost. Until you remember what that property actually included. Those 3 enslaved women you just claimed, you own them, you can sell them, you can force them to have children who will also be your property. You can work them until their bodies give out. Your freedom is built on their bondage. Your economic independence requires their complete dependence. This is the brutal complexity of Viking women's rights. You were told 3 days ago that you'd been chosen to accompany the chieftain to Valhalla, chosen to serve him in the afterlife as you served him in this life. You're a slave girl, maybe 16 years old. You know exactly what chosen means. They've been giving you something to drink for the past 2 days, something that makes everything feel distant and dreamlike. You're wearing fine clothes now, jewelry, things you've never been allowed to touch before. People are being kind to you, which is more terrifying than when they were cruel. Kindness means they're preparing you for something final. The funeral ship has been dragged onto shore. The chieftain's body lies inside, surrounded by his weapons, his treasures, his dogs, also killed for the occasion. You'll be laid beside him before they light the fire. An older woman approaches. The others call her the Angel of Death, and she moves with the authority of someone who's done this many times before. She's not a priestess exactly, but she holds religious power. She knows the rituals. She directs the other women in what needs to be done, and what needs to be done is kill you. This is the part that shocked the Arab diplomat Ibn Fadlan, watching from a distance. Not that there was human sacrifice, he'd seen that in other cultures. What disturbed him was watching these Viking women organize your murder with the efficiency of women preparing a feast. Methodical, practiced, treating your death like any other household task that needed completion. Several women hold you down. The angel of death begins the ritual. You're too drugged to fight effectively, but some part of you tries anyway. It doesn't matter. Within minutes, you're dead. They lay your body beside the chieftain. By sunset, the funeral ship is burning, and you're forgotten. Your husband's ship sailed for Constantinople 2 months ago. Trading voyage, he said. Could be gone 6 months, maybe a year. Might not come back at all. Ships go down, traders get robbed. Diseases kill. But you can't wait around worrying. The farm needs managing. The trading post needs oversight. Decisions need to be made. You're standing in the trading post your family owns in Hedeby, one of the largest Viking trading centers. It's morning, and you're already negotiating with a merchant from the Baltic who wants to buy 3 of your thralls. 2 women, 1 man. You've owned them for 4 years, bought them when they were captured in a raid near Novgorod. The merchant examines them the way you once did, checks their teeth, tests their strength, asks about their skills. The younger woman is pregnant. That increases her value because the baby will also belong to whoever buys her. The man has a scar on his back from when you had him whipped for stealing food. That decreases his value slightly, but his strength compensates. You negotiate price with the same skill you'd use for any other commodity. These people represent silver, goods, profit. The fact that they're human beings who are about to be separated from each other, sold to different owners, torn apart like livestock, that's not your concern. Your concern is getting a good price and maintaining your reputation as a shrewd businesswoman, because that reputation matters. Other traders need to know that you're competent, that you run your household and your business well, even when your husband is absent. This is how Viking women built their economic independence, not through fighting in battles, but through trading in human flesh. You're holding your newborn son. He was born 3 hours ago, and he's perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, strong lungs. Your husband is away raiding, but you know he'll be pleased when he returns. A son, a boy to carry on the family name. But there's a problem. Your eldest daughter is 12, and last month she gave birth. One of your thralls, a young man you've owned for 5 years, got her pregnant. You didn't know it was happening until it was too late. Now you're looking at your daughter's baby. your grandchild, technically, but also the child of a slave. In Viking law, children inherit the status of their mother. Your daughter is free, so her baby is free, but there's no father to claim him, no free man to give him a name. You have options. You could acknowledge the baby, raise him as part of your household, but everyone would know his father was a thrall. That shame would follow your daughter forever, would damage her marriage prospects, would taint your family's reputation. Or you could make a different choice. You tell your daughter that the baby was born dead. You give the infant to one of your enslaved women, the boy's father's wife, actually, and tell her to raise him as her own. In one decision, you've transformed your free grandson into someone else's slave. Your daughter cries, but she's 12. She'll recover. She'll marry well, have legitimate children. No one will ever need to know about this. The baby who should have been free will grow up enslaved in your household, never knowing that the woman who owns him is actually his grandmother. This is the kind of power Viking women wielded. This is the kind of decision they made without hesitation. It's 1030 AD, and the world is changing. Christianity is spreading through Scandinavia, bringing new laws, new morality, new ideas about slavery and freedom. The kings are consolidating power, limiting the independence of regional chieftains. The great age of Viking raiding is coming to an end. You're old now, maybe 50, which is ancient by Viking standards. You've buried 2 husbands and outlived most of your children, but you're wealthy, one of the richest women in your district. You own land, livestock, and 12 thralls. Your household is one of the most productive in the region. The new Christian priests keep talking about freeing slaves, about how owning people is sinful. The king has issued decrees limiting how slaves can be treated, requiring that they be allowed to marry, suggesting that children born to Christian slaves should be freed. You ignore all of it. You've been managing thralls your entire adult life. You know how to extract maximum labor while keeping them alive and functional. The new laws are for weak people who don't understand practical economics. But your granddaughter is different. She's been baptized, raised with these new Christian ideas. She talks about freeing the household slaves when she inherits. She says it's wrong to own people, that God will punish slave owners in the afterlife. You laugh at her naivety. You built this wealth through decades of hard work and smart management. The thralls you own represent your security, your legacy, your power. The idea of just giving that away because some foreign priests say it's sinful, absurd. But you're old enough to see the writing on the wall. The world your granddaughter will inherit won't have room for women like you. The brutal, practical, economically independent Viking woman who built her wealth on others' bondage. That era is ending. History will forget women like you, or worse, will romanticize you into something you never were. Shield maidens with swords, fighting for glory. They'll never tell the truth about what you actually were. Walk into any store, and you'll find Viking-themed everything: costumes, toys, TV shows, movies. The History Channel gives us Vikings with Lagertha, the Shield Maiden. Hollywood gives us strong warrior women fighting for their freedom. It's all a lie, not because Viking women were weak, they weren't, but because the real source of their power is something we're uncomfortable acknowledging. Viking women weren't empowered despite their society's brutality. They were empowered through it. Their economic independence came from managing slave labor. Their legal rights existed partly so they could run estates and trading operations while men were away. Their authority over household decisions included authority over enslaved people's bodies, lives, and children. Less than a dozen graves contain women with weapons, but hundreds contain women with keys, symbols of household authority, of economic management, of power over others. The brutal truth about Viking women is this: they had real power, real independence, real rights that most medieval women lacked, and they built that power by enslaving other women, by selling captured people like livestock, by making cold calculations about which babies lived and which were exposed in the forest. This doesn't make them victims, it makes them participants, beneficiaries, perpetrators. When we dress up as Vikings for Halloween, when we celebrate shield maidens in our entertainment, we're erasing this truth. We're choosing the comfortable lie over the complicated reality. The women on that Volga River slave market weren't there as victims. They were there as auctioneers, as traders, as business women profiting from human suffering. The women managing estates weren't helpless maidens waiting for men to return. They were making life and death decisions about the enslaved people they owned. This is what real female power looked like in Viking society: not swords and shields, keys and ledgers, economic control built on others' bondage. If this video challenged what you thought you knew about Viking women, share it. Subscribe for more history that refuses to romanticize the past. Comment where you're watching from and what surprised you most. The next time you see a Viking shield maiden in a movie, remember the real Viking women, the ones who inspected slaves' teeth at auction blocks, who decided which babies lived or died, who built their independence on the forced labor of people they owned. Hollywood gave us Lagertha with a sword. History gives us something far more complex and morally challenging: women with real power, real agency, and real complicity in one of medieval Europe's most brutal systems. The shield maiden is a fantasy, the slave trader is history, and understanding that difference matters, even 1,000 years later.